Right, hi Jake.
Hi, Paul.
So as it's the summer holidays, I thought what a better place to come to do our next little chat than Bournemouth Beach.
Nice weather as well.
I know, well for our international viewers it's 20 degrees Celsius, which is about 69 degrees Fahrenheit, which in England we call summer, but as you can see it's pretty cloudy. So what are we here today to talk about? We are here to talk today about governance in Jira. So what I thought we'd do is, first of all for the audience, is define what in Jira governance is. So give me some examples of what governance is, please.
So governance in Jira is about the control of your instances and making sure they're de-risked. So things like your users, your processes, your authentication, that's sort of the top level governance of really keeping that control so you keep the systems and applications healthy.
Okay. And why, can you run Jira without governance?
If you ran Jira without governance, there'd be a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
So you'd have loads of custom fields, shared screen schemes that have loads of different screens, loads of issue types, and it would be very out of control. You'd also have like users that weren't managed properly as well.
Yeah.
So I think that governance is definitely something people should be doing.
And inbuilt to Jira is the ability to create governance, which is really just simple rules of engagement, I suppose, whilst using Jira. Be that certain field types, certain drop-down menus, and thus allowing you to create a platform where everyone is playing in the same way, fundamentally. So when it comes to governance in Jira, what have you seen in your experience over these last 7 years that customers do when it comes to governance, whether that's from a who manages it perspective or even how they go about governance? What sort of examples have you got?
So one of the best things to do is have frequent check-ins. So if you've got a Jira administrator or someone that looks after the application on site, you sort of review the health of it on a regular basis. So you're looking at things like the amount of custom fields you have, whether they're in use in multiple cases, so you've got duplicate custom fields, for example. Things like having one workflow for a particular team, so in progress and done and backlog in a workflow. Some teams, that's all they need. And you want to have workflows that you don't have sort of like 100 of them across the instance, because otherwise you end up, they all do the same thing, they've got different statuses, or they've got statuses that are very similar to each other. Things like project templates as well is best practice, so having projects that are sort of uniform across the system, so they're not all customized and you've got so many different schemes across the instances. That's some of the good best practices, definitely.
Let's break some of those down then. So we've got the custom fields one is a classic within the Atlassian ecosystem. You know, everybody knows about a custom field. It's obviously very flexible by its customizable nature, but we certainly know the stories of where we've reviewed some customers' custom fields, and they have the classic one, which is DOB, date of birth, and effectively 4 or 5 fields which represent the same thing, in this example, date of birth. What is a way for a user today to go away and say, you know what, I'm going to have a look at my custom fields? How simple is that for them to do?
Yeah, so a Jira administrator can go into the system administration side of Jira, have a look at all of the custom fields that are there. I mean, I've seen instances with thousands of custom fields. And if you think about the way Jira indexes those custom fields, and if you're using apps like EasyBI, for example, and you have to run reports, Jira has to go through all of those custom fields when it indexes, and it does that as part of like workflow transitions, and it can really affect the performance of it, especially in server and data center. You can go into the Jira administration side and check your custom fields, but you can also do a system info report, which will give the amount of custom fields that you've got.
Right.
But the best thing to do is check where they're similarly named, or even speak to users. They know that when they're using Jira, they're creating an issue, and there's multiple fields that do the same thing. And what you can then do is start to consolidate them and move them. It's quite difficult once they're in place, because you've got issues that are using them already. but it is best practice to tidy them up, garden them, and make sure it's uniform across the application.
And is there any particular type? We gave the date of birth example, which is it's really easy to understand, but I think there's more classic ones which gets multiplied up to be the same description. I think one of the words you should look for is the word description. Because what often happens is a Jira ticket is created, and what you're trying to say is, here's the information I need, then write some free text. That's generally what we're trying to communicate when gathering information. What you will probably find is the word description is given multiple descriptions of, so that's the field I would say to look out for. Is there any others from your...
Yeah, another one I see quite a lot is budget.
Okay.
So you've got budget 1, budget 2, monetary value.
Yeah.
Like there's so many different ones, because managers, what they want is to report on these custom fields in dashboards, or if they've got a subscription to a JQL filter, and they use it for reporting purposes. But what they need to consider is whether they actually need that data, whether it's providing value to the business, or they're just using it for vanity metrics for the sake of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see budget quite a lot, which is duplicated.
Okay. So there's a few examples there of running a report to find these multiple fields via your Jira administration area. So give that a go. See if you have got multiple DOBs, for example, date of births. Let's move on to the topic of workflows. So the beauty of Jira, the ability to create a workflow. What we all know, and I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this today will know, is every team thinks they're special. And of course they're special, of course they are. You're all special, but what we really know in business is a lot of teams all end up doing similar types of work. If you use a typical example of a development team for product A, B and C, I'm sure people will definitely feel the frustration where they go, no, our workflow needs to look like this. So again, from an advice perspective, looking at workflows, first of all, how do you find out how many workflows you've got? Same question in that respect.
Yeah, again, you can look at the system info and see where the workflows are and how many you've got across your instance, but you can also look at, in the workflow section itself, which ones are active, which ones are inactive. And quite often when people copy workflows, you'll see copy of development workflow or project specific dev project workflow, and then you'll go into the workflow and you'll see a lot of the workflows that are in place have similar statuses, and people will often create similar statuses like in progress 1,
nearly done.
Yeah, it happens quite a lot, and you've got backlog, in development, in review, done, etc. But you've got workflows that are just so similar that are being used across the instance, and they're just duplicates. And it can really affect the performance, but also having that governance keeps the instance healthy.
Exactly, and this is the reason. So performance, yes, is absolutely, especially behind the firewall, there's an element of performance is a reason to actually review this, but more importantly is the data output side of things, isn't it? We're doing work in Jira, the teams are working fine, so you may be going, well, I don't want to almost poke the beast in a way. The reason you should be looking to review this is because what you all want is that consistency of output of data, and this is from a managerial overview project perspective. Are you getting the right data? So that's a very good reason to look at the workflows. So moving on to I suppose the other category we're starting to talk about, which is the template idea.
Yeah.
So again, give a definition of what the template is, and then let's talk about that.
So a project template, basically, it's ease of use. So for people that are administering Jira, they can create a template which includes the schemes, the screens, and everything, including the workflows, everything they need in order to just say, right, I need a software development project, it looks like this, create, and it will roll out the same sort of best practice across that project. So you can have, it's just ease of use really.
And this is where we're really getting into the governance bit now. So what we've just spoken about are almost health check ideas for you to undertake. Obviously Atlassian partners can also do this for you, but the templated idea, this is where we're moving into the world of efficiency. let's think about, even from today, how do you want all the projects to run from today? So think about the workflows. There's a story I often tell in front of customers where we spoke to one very famous American organisation. It was, I'm not going to give any further definitions of that, and they had genuinely hundreds of workflows. And then on the flip side of that, a very famous German organisation, and this is with thousands and thousands of employees, and they had one.
Yeah,
some would say that's very German, very efficient, which we like to see, but that's the extremes that we see. One is probably too little, to be honest, but if you're in the region of 5 to 7, you're almost too many, aren't you? I wouldn't want to be seen in the tens, that's for sure, unless you are, a very special, very large, or not even special, very large organisation. So we've talked about the governance. Templating is a really good idea. So let's move it on to that next stage where you're going, okay, template, we've never done templating. Where does that role often end up in an organisation? Again, from experience in our customers, who ends up doing that type of role that you've seen?
So that sort of goes to whoever the Jira administrator is at the organisation. Some companies have dedicated Jira administrators that day in, day out, change the workflows, create queues in JSM, create projects and manage the instance. But what quite often happens is when you do a Jira project rollout or Confluence rollout, the person managing that as a project ends up being the gatekeeper.
Yes.
They end up being the one that looks after their users. So they'll be the go-to person for requests for changes, creating statuses, changing transitions, creating projects. And that's actually quite a big challenge for a lot of organisations, because they want to be able to get on with their day job, because it isn't their full-time job to manage Jira or Confluence, and they essentially want to outsource it or pass it to experts that can do it as a managed service. Yeah.
So we're back here again, and we've touched on this a few times in our recent videos, which is if you are lucky enough to have a dedicated Jira admin, fantastic. You really have everything we've just spoken about, that you can either show them this video, you can share with them some of the ideas that we've talked about and ask them to go and do that work for you. Look at the custom fields, how many workflows have you got, are you using templates to create projects? Or if you fall into the other category, which we see surprisingly a lot, where this is not your day job. You're either a hobbyist, sometimes we call it, or like Jake described, you were the person who started this project. This is the type of area where we're really looking to help you. Either transition you into a Jira administration role, but that might not be where your best value is. It often isn't. Often these are the brightest people in your teams who end up with this role, which we have mentioned before. So these are the type of people we want to help. We want to help by either taking that from you and doing it like a managed service we talked about, because Jake's team have just been doing this for so long, and it's actually more efficient and cost effective, because you're not going to change your workflows all day, especially when you've templated the approach to your projects moving forward. So it can be in the space of a few weeks you can actually set up everything we've described and run it yourself, or you can template the approach we've described again in a short space of time, and then just saying, actually Clearvision, you do it as well. So there's a few options there, so have a look into that. Okay, so we've talked about quite a few technical areas really. We're talking about governance, we're talking about workflows, lots of areas. You might not necessarily have the skills to even ask somebody to do this for your Jira, which is very reasonable and understandable. So let's talk about education. I think it's really worth understanding. One of the great values about the Atlassian ecosystem is the amount of education that's available for free. Atlassian publish everything online, everything using Confluence, funnily enough, via their website. So Google any of these topics and you will find articles, blogs, you'll definitely find YouTube videos. I'm almost convinced there's Udemy training on a number of these topics we've talked about. But as we also know, Jake, that isn't always the answer. First of all, it can take a while to educate yourself on these topics. So what have Clearvision done in terms of helping customers get this level of education in a short, sharp way?
So at Clearvision, we've got dedicated training courses that are instructor-led. So rather than having online videos, which are great to a certain extent, we've got interactive hands-on instructor-led training that can help people in certain roles. So we offer like Jira administrator courses, courses dedicated to specific apps or plugins, and they can really help educate people in those roles to create that governance in Jira and follow best practices.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something worth looking at and touching on, because education links to governance. If you think about every time you add a new user to Jira, that's another user that can raise a request to you or your team. And what will happen is you'll start getting a lot of requests for changes, new custom fields, changes of workflows. And if that person isn't educated properly to follow best practice and have that control and governance, then that's when it slips.
Yeah.
And you'll lose the governance of Jira and following best practices.
Yeah. But historically, over the last decade, because Atlassian was a bottom-up technology, customers would generally install it themselves, configure it themselves, and around about 18 months is when the hand would go up and say we need some help. That is because of the governance, because of we've kind of let it go out of control. So if you're in a situation where you're worried that might happen, go down this line of topic, look at your governance, look at your templates, everything we've just said. If you're about to start on a project, do it now, because you'll be not needing this assistance in 18 months. Or if you just want to do a check on where your actual solution is today, these are the areas that we would recommend looking into.
Yeah.